What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, as well as Luca, and we're returning for another tune from the Lucky 7 soundtrack by Wynn, 2012. And I actually did a little research on Mr. Wynn. He's, I think, an English composer, but he clearly has been either living in or at least working in Japan a lot in the last decade, because he's done the soundtracks to several different J-dramas since the early 2010s right up into the present. So my assumption is he's probably living somewhere in Tokyo and is a go-to artist when it comes to soundtracks to J-dramas. In any case, the point is we're going to listen to a tune called The First Step. I had a hard time picking. There's like 3 or 4 very emotional tunes left in this soundtrack that I've yet to react to, but after just going through them momentarily before doing this reaction, this is the one I decided on. And yes, it's a track that features different instruments in the orchestra, meaning we hear violins, we hear, I think, an oboe, certainly woodwinds of some kind. My expectation, or rather my hypothesis, is that we're hearing oboes. There's a piano in there, there's, I think, like pizzicato strings, maybe an acoustic guitar, so yeah, it's got some different instrumental ingredients, but the cumulative effect is a very sweet and tender tune. I think the concept of the first step, the idea of beginning some journey or trying to figure out what is going on with some situation, which is of course what the Lucky Detective Agency, I shouldn't say Lucky 7. Lucky 7 is what it becomes once the de facto main character, Shuntaro, played by Matsumoto Jun, joins, because prior to that there's 6 people, and the name officially is the Lucky Detective Agency, but by joining they become the Lucky 7, or by Shuntaro joining they become the Lucky 7. Nevertheless, it has this sound of the early phase of some process, and there's an earnestness to it which I think speaks to both Shuntaro specifically, but also Lucky 7 Detective Agency in principle, as well as some of the people they come into contact with and help over the course of the show. And it ultimately has a very pleasant chronology or evolution over the course of the track. So I think it's emotionally fitting. Again, there's action tunes on this soundtrack, there's light and almost, comedic or fun tunes on the soundtrack that are played during, the bantering moments, the comedy moments, but I did want to go through a lot of the more emotional tracks first. So let's give it a listen. This is from Wynn and his soundtrack to Lucky 7, a J-drama from 2012, which, if you didn't know, I've just started going through on my Patreon. I did an opening double episode for the first watch-along, and I'll be doing the 3rd episode very soon. Shout out to Michaela and Dawn, who've already been commenting. And yes, this is, as I said, The First Step. Beautiful tune. It really is such a great soundtrack, in particular to my ears and brain. On the more emotional side, the tunes that have a lot of that warm emotional resonance, which certainly fits with, again, the Lucky Seven Detective Agency overall, as well as some of the individual cases. I mean, if you've seen the first couple episodes, which I know a couple of you have, but maybe there's some others too. Again, a lot of the watch alongs I do, not just J drama, but them maybe in particular, they get a fair number of views and impressions and like overall watch time, though again, for the most part, there's only been a couple people commenting, so my expectation is that there's at least some people who are watching without commenting. In any case, if you are one of those people who've seen, you will know that there is a lot of emotion just in the first couple episodes in terms of, the people the detective agency comes into contact with and tries to help. And obviously, as with any detective type story, there's some twists and turns and some unexpected elements along the way, but the point I'm trying to make is that the agency comes into contact with and ends up helping some very good people who, are morally upstanding and decent despite being in complicated situations. So, yes, I'm looking forward to going through more. As I said, it's a great show, even if I don't remember a lot of the details that lie ahead, just, snippets and memory that there's a lot of good action scenes, which again, if you saw the first episode in particular, but also the second episode, you'll be aware the show has a lot of action, and I think it's really well done. It's all of it. It's the stunt work, it's the camera work, it's the choreography. It's just really well put together, and it's not something you normally expect to see in a detective show where, you're trying to uncover clues and the main characters are trying to figure out a mysterious circumstance. So yeah, when I first watched it, that was the element that most surprised me and in which I'm looking forward to seeing again. In any case, do let me know what you think. There's more to come. As I said, there's at least a few more tunes in this type of vein, and then we'll go through some of the action-packed tunes. I haven't forgot about some of the soundtracks I've still been going through. There's still a few tunes on My Boss, My Hero soundtrack that I haven't reacted to. There's more from Kurakochi. There's a bunch from Hana no Chihare that I haven't reacted to. The Hanayori Dango Seasons 1, 2, and the final movie that I haven't reacted to, or parts of each of those that I haven't reacted to. So yes, plenty more to go in the J-drama soundtrack playlist. Do let me know what you think, and Luca, the somewhat mischievous cat, and I will see you next time. Peace.